Leader? The question is that the motion moved by the leader, as many as are of that opinion, say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Ms. Tin Pei Ling?
Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a meaningful debate in support of Singapore women, and I support the amended motion. Since I entered this House in 2011, I have heard many suggestions made by fellow MPs and have also seen real policy changes being implemented to resolve pain points and provide stronger support to Singapore women. I was listening intensely to Honourable Member He Ting-Ru's speech and several of the Workers' Party members earlier and found their points made to be quite similar to the suggestions made by my fellow PAP MPs over the years. For instance, Ms. He today said or asked for greater representation of females in the leadership level for greater diversity of views. Indeed, in 2017, several members of this House, including Madam Deputy Speaker yourself, Honourable Member Vikram Nair, Alex, Louis, and several others have called the same. In terms of, she also raised the point on CPF transfers, and this was also a point that was raised by several of our members, including Ms. Joan Pereira, former MP Lee Bee-Hwa, Dr. Intan in 2017, and there were several efforts before that as well. There was also a suggestion or a call for the gender-neutral CareShield Life premium. I think this one, several members, including myself, also called for this in 2018 and again in 2019. So indeed, I'm very heartened to observe this because these reinforces the recommendations that we had put forth as well, as we all desire to support Singapore women in realizing their fullest potential. I'm also heartened to note that so far, nobody has objected to the amendment as moved by Honourable Member Mr. Vikram Nair. And I therefore take it that it is a recognition that we need to go beyond this debate and have it translated into something that's actionable for the future as set out in the upcoming white paper. Indeed, this House has over the past 6 to 7 decades seen many exchanges and recommendations on how we can empower and advance Singapore women. MOS Sun Xueling earlier recounted the key milestones in this long journey towards removing barriers and empowering Singapore women. More recently, in 2017, I, and together with fellow PAP women MPs, Ms. Jessica Tan, who's Deputy Speaker, Ms. Cheryl Chan, Joan Pereira, and former MP Lee Bee-Hwa, moved a private member's motion titled Aspirations of Women. I was heartened that 18 members of the House, including me, spoke on this important cause, and that our ministers and ministers of state gave so much of their time to address our concerns and recommendations and echoed their support for the aspirations of Singapore women. And I certainly appreciated the interest and support from the Workers' Party in the 2017 motion debate as well. Through the 2-day debate, colleagues and I articulated and elaborated on the 4 strategies that we believed were critical to supporting Singapore women in their aspirational pursuits. Let me briefly sum up. The first strategy was to create capacity. We agreed that as of the current reality, the primary caregiving role was still undertaken by women, and therefore we called for more support to our caregivers, including enhancing availability and access to care options, so as to free up women's capacity to pursue their aspirations, career or social-wise. Colleagues who called for this included Ms. Joan Pereira, Ms. Cheryl Chan, and MOS Sun Xueling. At the same time, We called for platforms and cogent programs to refresh and build new capabilities to help back-to-work women, because these expand their capacities to pursue the diverse aspirations that they may have. Ms. Jessica Tan, Ms. Joan Pereira, Mr. Darryl David, Dr. Intan Azura, and Parliamentary Secretary Rahayu Mazam spoke very passionately on this in 2017. The second strategy was to provide options for women, so that ladies with career aspirations do not have to feel that they need to sacrifice or feel guilty about having to juggle different roles and feel inadequate at any point in time. A wide range of recommendations, including flexible work arrangements, were raised by almost all the MPs who spoke. In addition, Ms. Cheryl Chan and Mr. Darryl David called for progressive HR policies and practices to complement the many recommendations put forth. MPs such as Ms. Joan Pereira, Engineer Lee Biwa, Parliamentary Secretary Rahayu Mazam, Mr. Alex Yam, Dr. Intan Azura called for CPF top-up for women who gave up their careers to stay at home to care for their family members. I should add that this recommendation was also something that the PAP Women's Wing pushed for in 2015, and we called it Top Up with Love. And also from this year, the Match Retirement Savings Scheme was also implemented. The third strategy was to remove barriers, especially the ones that were often stereotypical and pigeonhole women in Singapore. Members including Ms. Jessica Tan, Mr. Vikram Nair, Mr. Alex Yam, and Mr. Louis Ng spoke passionately about how women were underrepresented at the board and executive level, and how we should also drive up women's participation and leadership within the community. But to do so, we need to recognize the stereotypes and biases constraining women in those different roles. Mr. Darryl David, Mr. Louis Ng, Dr. Intan Azura, and certainly Mr. Leon Pereira talked about the need to shift the care burden to have a more equal sharing of care duties between men and women, whether it is at the workplace, in the family, or even within the social setting. At the same time, Ms. Jessica Tan also reminded everyone to be conscious of our unconscious bias so that women will not be inevitably disadvantaged from the start of recruitment. The fourth strategy was to be future-ready, to have smart women for a smart nation, something that I felt and continue to be passionate about. We called for digital fluency, the use of smart solutions to create capacity, and empowering women with STEM education so that they are well positioned for the job opportunities in growth sectors and leap towards closing that gender pay gap. This recommendation is again reiterated in the paper jointly authored by the PAP Women's Wing and Young PAP submitted this year. Taken together, the debate demonstrated from both sides of the House our support for the aspirations of Singapore women and the willingness of this government to support likewise. Between the debate in 2017 till now, I'm encouraged to observe several positive developments. For instance, the number of home care and daycare places increased to 10,300 and 9,000 respectively in 2019, exceeding the 2020 targets announced in 2017 back then. Infant care centres increased from 512 in 2017 to 661 in 2020. And childcare centres increased from 1,389 in 2017 to 1,542 in 2020. To facilitate intergenerational bonding, the first intergenerational playground and infant and childcare centre within a nursing home was launched in late 2017. Since then, we have witnessed elder care and childcare facilities being co-located in new HDB estates. Macpherson Spring, in my constituency, is an example. I believe such co-location of facilities offers much convenience to caregivers taking care of the young and old in their families. Of course, in addition to increasing the availability of these care places, subsidies also plays a very important role to help making it a lot more accessible to working fathers and mothers. And in this respect, I'm glad to note that childcare and infant care subsidies have been enhanced in 2020 last year. On flexible work arrangements, we know from a January 2021 written parliamentary response to Mr. Christopher D'Souza that the vast majority of employees today, including caregivers, have access to flexible work arrangements. In 2019, about 85% of employers offered some form of FWA, and this number increased during the COVID-19 period. As of end November 2020, more than 8,000 companies adopted the tripartite standard on FWAs, up from under 2,000 companies a year ago. Could we still do more? Certainly. That's why many colleagues like Dr. Tan Wu Meng, for example, today continue to champion this, as evident by his parliamentary questions in this House just earlier today. In empowering more girls with STEM education, I'm encouraged that female representation in information technology courses in local universities has increased from 28% in 2017 to 35% in 2019. Still room for improvement, but making progress. And pushing further, to avail Singapore women of good career opportunities, the PAP called for greater help for women to secure jobs in growth sectors, as we recognize that there are tech-like jobs suitable for those without a STEM background within the tech sector, and demand for workers remains strong in the care and green economy. Madam Deputy Speaker, please allow me to speak in Mandarin. 副议长女士，很高兴能够参与辩论今天这项有意义的动议。我支持修改后的动议。新加坡妇女们对于家庭、社区及国家的贡献是大家有目共睹的。自我2011年踏入国会以来，我听到许多国会同僚就支持新加坡妇女的课题提供了许多的建议。更见证了政府落实一系列有助新加坡妇女取得长足发展的政策。很有幸，在2017年的时候，我和4位国会同袍在国会中提出动议，联合另外13名议员就如何帮助新加坡妇女实现理想及抱负进行了2天的辩论。2017年的辩论概括了4大策略：第一，设立并加强架构与服务分担看护者的重担，为他们腾出时间，能够更好地兼顾他们的多重角色。第二，提倡灵活工作制，基于他们顾家又无需牺牲事业的选择。第三，鼓励社会及企业重视妇女的经济潜能与贡献。第四，提倡妇女在科技方面的技能培训，为数码新时代及未来经济做好准备。所提的建议当然不限于妇女而已。我和国会同僚当时希望通过动议争取大家的支持，以实际行动来支持我们的妇女们。这无疑能够强化新加坡的根基，帮助国人无论男女都能发挥所长，为我们共同的未来做好准备。自2017年至今，我国在多方面，包括年长幼儿看护、灵活工作制、数码教育及培训都有所进展。例如，居家看护从2017年至2019年增加了38%，日间看护也在同期增加了88%，托儿中心也在同期增加了11%，而托儿这方面的津贴于今年也上调。争取妇女辅助悠悠60余载，今天的动议便是建立在这厚厚的基础上，多增了一片砖瓦。随着每一波的工业革命、职场技能的刷新、大环境的变换及社会态度的变迁，我们也得跟得上步伐，做出相对的调整。相信这也是为什么政府于去年宣布与民间及私人领域的伙伴联办女性发展对话，把建议集成白皮书，并于今年提呈给国会。人民行动党也响应号召，于上周向政府提呈了12项为推动女性发展的建议。同样的，妇女行动及研究协会与工人党也接连提呈了他们的建议。显然，新加坡妇女对于家庭及社稷的贡献不可忽视。为支持妇女实现潜力及志向，我们也必须坚持向前。因此，我热切期待 白皮书的公布. In English, please. This journey to support Singapore women fulfill their fullest potential and aspirations is not new. Even as I speak of the 2017 debate, there were many others before me in this House who had championed the cause. Likewise, today's motion adds to the journey, and I'm glad that we are building on this firm foundation. There are many things we can still do to support Singapore women. As the broader environment changes, as demographics and societal attitudes shift, we need to adjust too. Hence, our endeavour to support Singapore women must continue. And I believe that it is in this spirit that the government is tabling a white paper later this year. Contributing to this white paper, the PAP submitted our recommendations to the government last week. Likewise, the AWARE and WP have put forth theirs. But even as we continue to co-create these solutions, I believe it is important that this House affirms the familial, social, and economic contributions of Singapore women and our support for them to fulfill their aspirations in societal participation, and we look forward to the white paper. Thank you.